Okay, good. All right, so split the sack. So again, right, we're going to proceed like last time. Again, we're going to do this together. Remember, I don't want to do this by myself because you guys have such amazing interpretations that need to be incorporated in this. Poetry must be read together, right? Because the text is so rich, it is not possible for one person to have closure on the meaning, right? We need each other. So again, I'm going to read and then I'm going to listen to your interpretations and you will be taking notes on each other's interpretations, which are all very good. Okay, so still talking about love, right? So here he begins in Split the Sack, and we're going to explain the title in a bit. He begins with two animals, the fish and the bird, and he's comparing us in this passage, some of us, right? When it comes to love, we are like the fish and we are like the bird. So let's look at this, right? Why does the soul not fly when it hears the call, right? And skipping a little bit, keeping with the bird metaphor, we are out of our cages with our wings spread, yet we do not lift off. Okay, so here we are, we have the wings, we have everything we need, but we're so scared to jump. And it's silly when when you're looking at the bird, you're like, you're a bird, you're supposed to be doing this, right? What? And Rumi is saying, we are just as silly as that bird when we hesitate to enter a relationship, to enter a love journey, to commit to one person, right? We look as ridiculous as that bird. Likewise, the fish. Why does a fish gasping on land but near the water not move back into the sea? So this is a fish got kind of thrown on the shore. It's sitting there, puffing and puffing, and it doesn't want to go back in the water. And you're like, fish, this is where you belong. Why are you scared? This is stupid. You're going to die here, right? You're trying to reason with the fish. Fish doesn't want to go back in the water, scared. And Rumi is saying that's how we look, right? When we are scared of going back into the ocean of love, right? So, all right, so tell me a little bit, what does it mean? How are many of us, if not all of us to a certain degree, like that fish and like that bird? So I'm listening. Okay, Castillo, go ahead.
So, he mentions birds and fish, and for the bird, it's Rumi is kind of saying like how we're afraid to fly, get out of our comfort zone, and take a leap of faith. And for the fish, like you said, we just stay in one place. Like it's like we would rather be in our comfort zone and not experience what else is out there. So like the sea is kind of like love. So the sea is like love, and he's saying that we're afraid to jump into like
Okay, yes,
whatever.
that works very nicely, right? The whole poem actually is about leaving our comfort zone, right? Love is scary. We have to move beyond what we're used to. We have to change things, expand ourselves to a certain degree, right? So it's scary, right? So yes, we can see that as comfort zone. But is it really a comfort zone for the bird to be stuck on the branch and for the fish to be stuck on land? I want you to explore this a little bit. Yeah, we think, oh, this is better for me to stay here. It's more comfortable. But is it really our comfort zone? That's what I would ask. If you just go deeper with the matter, is the fish really comfortable on the land? And is the bird really comfortable on the branch? What do you think? Is it really about? So I agree with you, Castillo, but at the same time, right? He seems to be saying something else also. What does it mean that, so I would ask you this, right? Is the fish comfortable on land? And in many ways, are we comfortable in a loveless, right? When we choose to refrain from love. What will happen to the fish if it stays on the land?
We'll die.
So is it comfortable? So you see what I mean? So yes, we feel it's comfortable, but ultimately we are going to die from this comfort, right? This is what the text is saying. And the bird, if it stays on the branch, also will die because it cannot eat, it cannot go, and pick up food from the ground. It's gonna wither and die, right, on the branch. So this is what Rumi is saying. We want to stay in our comfort zone, not knowing that to stay in our comfort zone is to sign a decree for our death, right? We are going to shrivel up in that comfort zone. That's the lesson here, right? So what Rumi is saying is don't be afraid to enter the love journey, even if it looks treacherous. It's true. Flying, you've never done it. What could happen, right? The bird doesn't know. What's going to happen when he jumps off, right, for the first time. The fish, right, the ocean is vast. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of dangerous things going on in the ocean. What Rumi is saying is that yes, it's dangerous, yes, it's out of your comfort zone, yes, it's scary, yes, it's a risk, but this is where you will fully become yourself. I want you to write this down, right? Yes, yes, the love journey is dangerous, it's risky, it's treacherous, is out of your comfort zone. But ultimately, for Rumi, you can only be truly yourself and blossom, open your wings, fly, right? Swim in the water if you enter into this into this realm of love, right? Okay, good. Anybody else? 4, go ahead.
Professor, can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Sure. What Rumi is saying is that staying in our comfort zone, we think will protect us, but actually it will cause us to shrivel up in a certain way. And also, that's the first point, right? It's our death warrant to stay in our comfort zone. Also, not being afraid of entering the risky journey of love. Why? Because this is where we become fully ourselves, right? This is where our wings are spread. This is where the fish can finally, swim. So even though it's risky, it's actually the only way we can blossom as human beings is in a love relationship, right? Staying out to protect ourselves, we are remaining stunted. Does that make sense, Mustafa? Okay. 4. Okay, great. 4. Go
Can
ahead.
this be applied to other things besides love?
Sure. Do you have an example in mind?
For example, something like skydiving or things that you do like mountain biking. Does that apply to it?
Yeah, maybe Rumi is actually talking about life, right? He's saying don't be afraid to enter life and to try things and to explore and to risk things because that's where you will fully become yourself, right? I think I mentioned Nietzsche before, right? When he defines or he contrasts happiness with comfortableness, right? Comfortableness, you stay home, you don't move, right? Happiness for him, for Nietzsche, is not to be comfortable. It's to enter fully life and experience it in all of its depths and ecstasies, right? This is what Rumi is saying. Live, right? So yes, absolutely. For this can be an invitation to live, right? To enter into the circle of life, to not be afraid, to try certain things, take certain risks, right? Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Skipping a little bit. I want to go to this metaphor here of which we have to explain before we can comment on it. So this is a few lines down. We keep collecting rocks and broken bits of pottery like children, pretending they are merchants. So let's stop on this and try to first understand what he's referring to, right? So here he's referring to something a game that kids play where they trade stuff. How many of you did this when you were young? You would trade stuff with your friends, and this was like fun, something you would do. Let me hear you a little bit on what you traded. I'm curious. Okay, Sarkeesian, go ahead.
I don't know if it would be like a game or something, but always like trading snacks or whatever. When we were like a really, really young kid, I mean.
Okay, good. Trading snacks. All right. Anybody else traded anything? Had a trade thing going on? You trade cards, you trade marbles. This is way back. Trade stamps. Nah, you guys weren't doing that. What did you trade? Did you trade anything? Durand, go ahead.
um Also back in the day we used to trade stickers. Like everyone would come in with their own sticker book and we would trade stickers, fuzzy stickers, hologram stickers.
I remember that. Yes, thank you. Uno cards, Mustafa. Okay, good. You guys are getting the idea. So this is the same game, right? Except they don't have stickers. They have collected these kids, these little broken pieces of pottery that look cute and shiny rocks, right? And now they're trading, right? Okay, so it's a game. Now he's saying some of us, we love like this, like those kids, trading little bits of pottery and little rocks like merchants. And so he's saying some of us love like these kids, like merchants. And he's not saying this is a good thing, right? This is very limiting way of loving. So what does it mean to love like a merchant? Have a little piece. I'll give you this if you give me that. Okay, here we go. Tack, tack. Sarkeesian, tell us.
Like, it's always a fundamental problem I saw with a lot of different people around me who treated relationships either like romantic or like purely like platonic as like really transactional. Do you know what I mean? Like they basically only keep around their relationships not for the sake of themselves or for the sake of the other people, right? But the sake of themselves, right? Kind of just like they're kind of like, oh, I'm getting something out of this relationship, then I'll keep it. If I'm not getting anything, then I don't care, right? Kind of like really transactional based.
Very good, right? This is the mindset. This is our mindset. This is our civilization is a civilization of transactions, right? We're business-minded people, right? This is our culture, right? Business. So in our relationships, we do the same. We have these transactions, right? You do this for me, I do this for you. If you stop doing this for me, I'm out. This is not what we agreed on, right? If you stop giving me what I need, if this relationship stops serving me, right? This is an expression your therapist will ask you, right? Is this relationship serving you? And you will say no, and the therapist will say, well, yeah, now you know what to do, right? So when the relationship stops serving us, this is where the transaction is over. And we're like, okay, I'm off, right? I'm done with this. So Rumi is saying how much you are missing when you treat relationships like transactions, right? There is so much more, right, to love than a transaction, and you're missing out on where you would journey if you weren't so hung up on the transaction. I guess I would put it like that. Castillo, do you want to add? I think you had your hand up earlier.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna add on to what Sarkeesian said, like we give, but we also like expect something in return.
Absolutely, right? And Rumi is saying when we do this, we're like merchants. We're not like lovers, right? Lovers just, there's no transaction in mind, right? They love because it is in their nature to love, because that is how they reach their highest potential, right? They love because it is in their nature to love, not because they're getting something back, right? So we'll talk more about this, but let's continue. He continues with the same notion of not being like children, right? He continues, we should split the sack of this culture and stick our heads out, look around, leave your childhood. So again, telling us don't be like a child. Stop being a child when it comes to love, right? Oh, you don't give me this? Oh, okay, well, I'm out. Or, right, split the sack of this culture. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the splitting of the sack. This is the title of our poem. What is Rumi alluding to here? This is an experience that all of us have gone through. The splitting of the sack. What is he talking about? Let's see if some of you have biological minds. What does he mean by splitting the sack?
Twins?
What do you mean?
Like twins, like in utero?
You're on the right track, but why do you say twins?
Because when the eggs come, they eventually the placenta will split. Well, not placenta, but it depends on the type of twins you're having, obviously. It's like in what's it called? I'm sorry, I'm losing my words. Okay. In fraternal twins, it'll be like they are coming from two separate oh my god, what's the word? I'm sorry, I'm losing my words.
They have
Two separate eggs. Yeah.
They have two separate placentas?
That's what I was trying to get to. I couldn't get to it. You get what I'm
I
saying?
did not know that. Okay, I did not know that. So it works, but this is splitting the sack. Oh, you mean splitting in half. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Right, exactly. It's
yes.
like it, yeah.
So I like what you're saying, and I was not even aware this would happen with twins, but I think he's meaning it in a more elementary way. So continue on the metaphor. What happens when you splitting the sack, meaning you're exploding, bursting out? That's what he means by splitting the sack. Aguirre, continue on this because you were on the right track. What does it mean to come out of the
Where
sack?
else to go with this?
Okay, who wants to help Aguirre? She's there. What does it mean to open the sack that you were in as a baby?
You're born.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you, Greer, right? Absolutely. Splitting the sac is splitting out of the placenta that you're talking about, right? Aguirre, right? So you were right on track, right? He's talking about birth, right? And he's saying we need to be birthed. Stop sitting here in the placenta and be like, oh, this is so nice. I don't want to go out. No, I don't want to meet this person. No, I don't want to go on this trip. I don't want to try this. I don't want to, explore that. And here we are in the sack. But what Rumi is saying, you're going to die in this sack if you do not. At one point, the baby has to be born, has to come out to survive, right? You can't stay there forever. So he's saying a lot of us, we're hanging on to the placenta. We don't want to be birthed, right? And he's saying, but little do we know that this moment of birth, which I'm sure for every child is the most traumatic moment of their lives, right? I mean, imagine you're a child in the placenta, you're doing good, you're sitting here listening to Mozart, right, from your mother's belly, and so forth. You're comfortable, you're bubbling around in your bubble bath, right? And one day, a huge contraction begins, and now here you are being, right, plummeted by these contractions. You are flipped over, you are pushed down. I mean, the baby must be thinking it's the end, right? It's over now. I'm dead, right? There's so much going on, like the contractions and the baby's being squeezed, and it's like it's over, right? That's probably what it's thinking. And then as it comes out, it realizes, oh my God, this was the beginning. This is the true life, right? And so very much like this baby, this is how we are when we have the possibility of love. We want to stay in the placenta, and we think we're gonna die through these contractions, right? But the contractions of love actually are birthing us. That's what we saw with Diotima last time, right? That very often the love journey is like a birth. And these contractions can be very painful and scary, and you don't know what the outcome will be, but ultimately, right, and this is from the side of the baby this time, not from the side of the mother, right? Ultimately, you're birthed. And so that's what Rumi is saying, right? Let us not be afraid of leaving behind what we know for this unknown, because this is where the true life resides, right? This is where we will really breathe, right? Expand, grow. That's what he's saying. Okay, good. All right, let's skip over to the next poem, which is No Expectations, which I'm going to try and find by myself. Not happening. What page? What page is No Expectations? Somebody tell me.
76.
38.
Oh, yeah, mixed signals here. All right, 76, guys. All right, No Expectations. This is a good one. This is a good one. Okay, first, let's see what we learned. Actually, we'll do that at the end. At the end, we will combine everything that we learned. But so jot down what we learned for this poem we just finished, and then we're going to go to No Expectations. Okay, I'm going to skip to the second paragraph, where this is a quote you can throw in your parents' face when you're going out with some guy they don't approve, or girl they don't approve, right? Be foolishly in love, because love is all there is, right? So you tell them, Rumi said I have to be foolishly in love. I don't need to listen to your advice, right, on this person. So what does it mean? All right, let's stop a little bit. What does it mean to be foolish? What does he mean by being a fool? Now, none of us want to be a fool in love, right? None of us want to be taken for a fool. And yet Rumi is saying, be a fool. What's he saying? This is so countercultural. Balde, go ahead.
Taking risks, like doing all in.
Yes, take a risk of being a fool. It's okay. Right? We don't want to be a fool. We don't want, so what? Right? If you don't want to be a fool, you're never going to do anything. Right? Everything that you start out that's new, you're going to look like a fool in the beginning stages of it. How many of you have ever studied an instrument, played an instrument and started out? Okay, when you started, did you sound like, you know, Stravinsky or Mozart? No, you sounded like a fool, right? And yet you persisted and you became better and better, and now you're probably, right, amazing, right? It's the same with love. Most of us, when it comes to especially romantic love, at least we learn to love our siblings and our parents more or less, right? But romantic love is often a complete new thing. And we don't want to do it because we don't want to end up a fool. If we don't want to end up a fool, we will never do anything. It's okay to end up a fool and to be a fool at the end of the thing, because this is part of the journey. You will always be in the beginning stages of love. You will always end up in the place of the fool to a certain degree, right? Even if it works out, you'll be a fool many times, right? So that's what it is. Be foolishly in love. Don't be afraid of ending up like a fool, or of taking a risk, or of, you know, risking something, because otherwise you'll never do anything. Sarkeesian, help us add to this.
I think there's obviously as well that the idea of interpreting fool as dumb, right? So it's okay, be free, be dumb, do whatever, right? Like, get to make your mistakes now. Do you know what I mean? There could also be like the idea of like a fool, if you like really boil down the word in like one other definition, right? You could interpret it as like being ignorant, right? So another interpretation could be like, be okay with like love situations, or maybe even situations in life in general, right? We're approaching them from a point of ignorance, right? Since like if you're not delving into stuff that you're ignorant in, how are you ever going to stop being ignorant in them? And just the positiveness of experiencing new experiences as well.
Yes, we saw that last time with the person stumbling around, right? Confusion is part of the love journey. Let's not be afraid to not know.
It was DOT Matsu, I think, for the desire point. Yeah.
Yes, desire what you don't have, right? So absolutely, right? Let's not be afraid of entering the love journey as a blank slate, not really knowing how it's going to go, what I should do, being open to experiencing, open to learning new things, right? And not, being too constricted in what we think we know. Anything you know before you enter the relationship is out the window once you're in the right. None of this knowledge is useful when it comes to the real life situation, right? So entering in a state of I don't know what you're thinking, I don't know what you expect, I don't know what I want, I don't know where this is going, and yet here I am, right? I'm not afraid to enter this territory of not knowing, because this is really the territory of love, right? Love really is the one taking us forward. We are not in control, as we saw already, right? Okay, great. I think I saw another hand. Was it Williams? Williams? Go ahead.
Yes, it was mine. What I was gonna say was similar to what he was going to say. So I didn't really take it as in how you were interpreting it. I was gonna say like most times as kids, the habits that we have, it's kind of foolish. And, and in our parents' eyes, they say, oh, you're wasting your time doing this. And, you should take your book or go read a book instead. That's more valuable. But I took it as if it's what makes you feel happy, if it what's make you smile, you know, and if it's like that favorite toy that you have, even if someone tells you it's foolish, you should still go and do it. So,
Okay.
how I was seeing it.
Yes, I like that a lot too. Yes, very often you're in a relationship and people are criticizing and telling you, don't waste your time with this person. This is not the one for you, right? And yet you feel like this is something you need to be in. You need to be there at that moment, no matter how it pans out, right? And so Rumi is saying, be foolish. Don't worry about what people are saying and how you look in other people's eyes, because love doesn't care what other people think, right? Love will take you beyond culture. We saw this, right, in the other poem. Split the sack of what? The culture. Very often, and this is very valid here for you guys who are in Queens, right? In Queens, culture has a very strong impact, right? Your ethnicity, your religion, your tradition, right? Many people in Queens, right, in Queens College are bound by tradition or religion. And Rumi, of course, as a Sufi, is going to say, well, right, don't be afraid to split the sack of your traditions, of your religion, of your background for the sake of love, right? It's allowed when it comes to love, according to Rumi. Don't quote me. and have some angry parent come to my office, right, about me dissuading you from your culture. But Rumi is saying love very often will draw you beyond your culture, beyond your religion, beyond your background. And then you will have to learn to navigate, right, this new territory without the what do you, the how do you call this, the framework, or the, what do you call this when you have a building and you have a scaffold? Yes, without the scaffold of culture, it's harder. I agree. That's why your parents are saying, pick someone from your own culture, damn it. Why are you going with this crazy person we don't know anything about, right? So they're right. It's harder. You don't have the scaffold. You don't have the framework. But Rumi is saying, don't hesitate. If love is calling you beyond your culture, don't hesitate. It's harder. You have to basically find a whole new navigational skills, right? You have to have a new North Star, but it's possible, right? And it's not a bad thing, according to Rumi. Okay, Rumi, don't quote me. All right, let's skip a little bit. Here's the clearest definition of love. But what is love? Answer, dissolving the will. Okay, let's stop on that a little bit. The other proponents of free will in the class should be feeling quite uncomfortable with the statement, right? What do you mean love takes away my free will? That makes no sense. Okay, what does he mean? That love is the dissolution of the will. That doesn't sound very healthy. Where are the boundaries here? I don't see any boundaries. if I'm going to dissolve in front of you, right? What is he saying? What is this dissolving? What does he mean by will? Why should the will be dissolved? What do you think? Oh, y'all don't like that one. Okay, Durant, go ahead.
I was thinking when I read that, it was more like if someone asks what love is and answers dissolving the will, I felt like it meant that words are not necessary to describe what love is because it's a feeling. It's not something that requires an explanation.
That's interesting. Yes, instead of having a definition, what is love, right? We have an action. In other words, you can't know love until you've experienced the dissolution of love on yourself, right? So, I mean, Rumi, to be honest, it can be quite dangerous, right? This idea that love is a dissolution. But let's talk about this a little bit. What does it mean that love dissolves us? And how is this good? Or in other words, what would be a healthy way to experience this dissolution? Because I know a lot of us dissolve and we lose our integrity, we lose our principles, we lose our identity, we lose our dreams. So what does it mean to become dissolved in love? Williams, tell us.
I was gonna comment on what you guys were saying before. I'm taking it as sometimes, we always want our freedom and we always want free will. But at the same time, what is freedom and what is free will and what do you do with it? So it's like, yes, we all want love, but at the same time, what is love and what is it? When you have your freedom, does that mean like you're just gonna sit down and just do whatever you want? But what is whatever you want, We yearn for something, then at the same time, when we get it, we don't know what to do with it. So it's like we yearn and desire and seek for love, but then when we get love, we're so confused, we're suffocating, we're preventing ourselves. And then now you got what you wanted, but now you feel like you're in a cage, so that.
You still there, Williams? Nope, she disappeared. Williams, you there? Okay, let me elaborate on what she said. It's something interesting that she said that I want to stop on. This notion that free will is overrated. Oh yeah, you get to do whatever you want, but is this what you want? Right? Is this really what we deeply want, to just do whatever we want? Or is there another way to experience your freedom as perhaps the freedom that comes, like Rumi is saying, flying, swimming, entering a new dimension, growing, maturing? This too is freedom, right? So I want to stop on this, right? There's two ways to see freedom. The first way, freedom, I do what I want, and screw you. Right? But there's another freedom, which is the freedom of becoming fully yourself, the freedom of I'm flying, I'm swimming in the ocean. That's freedom. And yet you are dissolved in this new dimension, right? Your you that was sitting there all safe has become dissolved in the ocean, dissolved in the air. I think this is what he's meaning by dissolving the will, is becoming more than who you used to be. And only a relationship can make you get to that point. You can never become more than who you used to be by yourself, sitting in front of Netflix. You're not going to become more than yourself. But the relationship is what can help you open up and become more than who you were. Love more deeply. Forgive more powerfully. Have more pleasure, right? Have more inspiration, right? Love really dissolves the old you, so the new you, the creative, the loving, the growing part of you can be set free, right? Make sure you write this down, because I think this is what is happening, right? Love is the dissolution, make sure you write this down, of the old you, the comfortable you. Love is always an expansion, and as such, a dissolution of who you used to be, right? And so you cannot become expanded if you don't allow yourself to be dissolved. Which is the same idea of death that we saw before, right? You cannot experience the resurrection if you don't die, right? We have this notion of death in every one of his poems. He mentions this notion of dying. But for the Sufis, right, death was the prerequisite of resurrection. Right? So if you want to resurrect as a higher being than who you are right now, you have to learn to die, to dissolve, to sacrifice. to forgive, to suffer long, to be patient, right, with this other person. Because as you become dissolved, just like the grain, when it is in the earth, it dissolves. This is necessary for it to rise again as something even greater than what it was, right? This is a parable of Jesus, which I think is in the background of this, right? Jesus taught that just like a seed has to dissolve itself in the ground before the plant can emerge, we have to learn to die like the seed, right? So that we can resurrect. This is what Rumi is talking about here. Part of us has to dissolve for this powerful resurrection of your new self to be possible, right? Make sense? Put your hand in the screen if you're with me. Okay, great. Sarkisian, go ahead.
Yeah, for the Netflix comment, just really fast, I think you can grow experiencing creative works as well. It's just if you experience creative works in a kind of productive way. Obviously, if you're just sitting there drooling in front of Netflix, you won't really get anywhere, but you know what I mean, right? On another thing, I think I definitely agree that that's kind of more of what that might be the problem as well. It mentions on the inner cover, I think we went over this as well, like Rumi himself in his text is like 800 years old, right? So the problem is his actual vocabulary or the vocabulary that was available at the time probably predates some of the psychological terms. There's definitely the case that it could be about stuff like sacrificing the things you want in the relationship for the other person. Not completely, but otherwise, like, how could you sacrifice what you want for everything the other person wants if the other person also ideally sacrifices everything for you? Do you know what I mean? It's kind of give and take, compromise in certain situations.
Be careful, you're back in the transaction, Sarkisian.
Oh, sorry. I mean, sacrifice isn't inherent into this, but yeah, I get what you mean.
I sacrifice if you sacrifice.
No, but I'm actually agreeing with you that it's not as much about that as will, right? He's not really talking about will. He's talking about another term, I think, which I don't know if it's the official term, but I think it's called like ego, right? Like, for example, you'll have certain people who, if they experience, and it's like a little bit off topic, right? But if they experience like hallucinogenic drugs like mushrooms or whatever, right? Psychoactive mushrooms, they'll experience something like ego death, right? Or for that moment, right? Or however long the high lasts, they'll like lose their sense of self, right? And they're literally don't have a sense of self anymore. They'll be completely disillusioned with themselves, right? I think what he's really saying is just like exactly what you were saying, right? Yeah, like just like abandon this idea that there's a you and just like focus on the relationship itself as its own thing and love as its own thing.
Very good, right? Absolutely. And when we abandon,
Are you also saying?
Go ahead.
I was like, are you also saying like we should get rid of I in a relationship and think more of we, us, and our rather than me, myself, and I?
I like that. Yes, that's a nice way to put it. Yes, I hadn't thought of that at all, but that makes total sense. Your I is expanded into the we. You're still there, but you're bigger. You're a we now, right? So that's the idea here. It's a dissolution in order to allow something greater to emerge. It's not a dissolution so that you just end up like nothing. The dissolution is like just like the parable of Jesus, right? The seed dissolves. Why? Because only then can the plant emerge. So that's what we have here when we talk about dissolution, right? And this dissolution, by the way, the only person who can really, the only experience who really dissolves us is love, right? Art, yeah, art is still, you're still there, right? Or, right, so I see what you're saying, Sarkisian. Yes, there are some experiences like learning new things or trying new things, but there's no true dissolution there. On the contrary, you're accumulating experiences and knowledge, right? The real dissolution, I think, the only way is a relationship where the other is constantly dissolving you, right? Even the mystical relationship with God, or what you were talking, the experience with drugs, right, doesn't get to that, the core, which needs to be dissolved. There's nobody who does it better than the other, right? Even God can't dissolve you like this, right? If you think, oh, well, I believe in God, so I'm expanded. No, right? Even God cannot dissolve you to the degree that another human being can. And we know we have meltdowns in front of these human beings. That's the sign that you're really in the right place, right? Only a human being can really give you this powerful experience of dissolution and therefore resurrection, right? And again, I want to emphasize with Sarkisian again, right? Doesn't matter if the other is doing it or not. When you do it, you're growing, even if it's by yourself, right? That's why for Rumi, it's very one-sided. You don't have to have the other mirroring you, right? You're doing this for you. You're flying now. You're swimming now. You're becoming so much more. You're growing, you're learning, you're experiencing, and this in itself is intoxicating. You don't need the other to reflect you. Does that make sense, Sarkeesian? Yeah. Okay, now I want to go to the last passage, which is passage I want to spend a little bit of time on because I believe it has to do with forgiveness. So right now what I want to do with you guys in the remaining 15-20 minutes is a small forgiveness workshop. Forgiveness is one of the most misunderstood concepts ever. We have all kinds of misconceptions like, oh, I can't forgive you because you didn't ask for forgiveness, or I can never forgive that, right? Or why should I forgive? What's the point of forgiveness, right? So we struggle with this concept, right? And some of us say, I forgave you, but actually we didn't, right? So we don't really know what it is, why we should do it. Does it have to do with the other or with me? Right? We don't know. This is not clear. So today I want to do with you brief workshop on forgiveness because this is one of the most important skills you will ever need in a relationship. If you don't know what is forgiveness, you're going to struggle in relationships, right? Okay, so let me begin. Before going in the text, which I believe is about forgiveness, this next passage on the next page, I want to go back to the most ancient concept, at least in the Near Eastern context where Rumi is from. The most ancient version of forgiveness is in the Hebrew Bible, right? And then Islam builds on that, and the Sufism even further. So in Hebrew, it's interesting. The word to forgive, so we'll do a little Hebrew 101, is the word nasa, which actually literally means to carry. Okay, so I want to stop on that a little bit. When you forgive, you carry something. That doesn't sound good, right? Oh, carry this, right? So let me go a little further what it means, right? Let me give you an example of what it means to carry. Suppose someone comes at you, I don't know, in the street or in your family, whatever, starts yelling at you. And you choose to carry it rather than throwing it back in their face. You see the difference? Right? Most of us, when we get attacked, me on the first row, when I get attacked, it will come right back at you immediately before you start, right? So most of us, when we get hit by something, we immediately throw it back in the face of the person. Now, some of us are more subtle, some of us are less subtle. If you're aggressive, you'll throw it back immediately by yelling or whatever, being as violent or saying something just as mean, right? But if you're more subtle, you'll be passive aggressive. You won't say anything, but you won't cook their dinner ever, right? Or they'll know that they did something wrong, right? So, worse, you'll keep it in and it will devour you. And you will have this hidden resentment against that person. You'll act nice, but deep down you have so much hatred for them and you just can't stand them, right? So these are all ways that we throw back, whether it's internally throw back, like, now I resent you, right? Or I yell at you now, or I'm gonna hit you actually, right? But most of us, we react by throwing the offense back in the person's face, right? Now, the Hebrew word to carry means you don't do that. You take it and you don't allow it to come back out. All right, so make sure you write this down, right? Forgiveness in the Hebrew sense, and this is where Rumi's going, by the way, right? He's inspired by this tradition. The Hebrew sense is you take it, you don't throw it back. You just take it and let it just go. You let it go. That's the idea. Now, let me ask you this question, right? So that's the structure of forgiveness, right? Now, tell me. Actually, let me not ask you a question yet. Let me go further, right? Now, when you do this, actually, you're not really doing it first and foremost for the other, but for yourself, right? Yes, the other will benefit and we'll see how, but ultimately the first and foremost reason that you choose not to retaliate is for you. So let me explain. Suppose someone, cheats on you. Let's take the worst case scenario, worse than death, right? They cheat on you and now you're like, oh, you cheated on me? Watch me. Watch me. And you start cheating on them, right? A lot of us choose that route, right? Now, what you have, or we have this resentment, right? What you're actually doing by throwing it back in their face, whether by your resentment or by your actions, right? you're actually allowing their poison to enter you. Whatever poisonous thing was shot at you in your face, you are now allowing it to permeate your own being, and you are now becoming poisonous back. And so in a way, your hurt has become toxic. The pain that you felt when you were hit by the news of their infidelity or whatever has now become poisonous. And that is where the actual damage begins. The pain will never damage you. Pain, after a while, it goes. What damages us, the way the other can damage us, is if we allow the poison to become part of ourselves and we throw it back in their face. That's when the damage begins. So very often, right, we get hit by something, we feel pain, and instead of just staying with the pain, we allow the pain to become toxic and angry and resentful and vengeful, right? At that moment, we have entered the context of damage, right? At that moment, this is when the damage actually begins. So the forgiveness is really telling yourself, I am not going to become poisonous and toxic. I'm not going to allow this person to change me into them, right? I'm not going to allow this event to change me into someone worse than who I was. I'm going to let it go, and I'm not going to entertain the resentment or the vengeance for my sake, because it's in that way I will not allow them to shift me into a toxic state. I'm refusing the toxicity. I'm accepting the pain. I'm carrying the pain, because the pain eventually will wash away in time, but the toxicity will stay with you forever. Am I making sense? Put your hand in the screen if you're following what I'm saying. Okay, Sarkeesian, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was a little confused at first. Like, you actually got to exactly what I was about to say, right? Like that, like, I always saw forgiveness as something that, the way I've seen it promoted, right, is like for really the sake of like whatever victim or whatever wrongdoing, right? Like, you forgive but not forget. That doesn't mean you have to interact with the person again or whatever happened. Do you know what I mean? Doesn't mean you have to give them the light of day again. It's kind of like letting go of the negative emotions first and foremost for your own sake. What I'm curious about is, if it's about letting go instead of like keeping the negative emotions there, right? Why is it called to carry?
To carry, because you don't throw it back, right? You carry the pain. You carry the offense. You don't put it back on them. That's
Oh,
what you do.
so that's kind of like it has like implicitly in it, it has the forgive, don't forget
Um,
by carrying the pain. Like, you remember it, but you don't let it affect you.
it's not in that sense.
I mean, isn't forgetting the same thing as letting go?
Yeah, that's
Because like when you,
yeah.
yeah, because
Sorry, go ahead, Williams.
no, you can go.
No, finish.
Okay, because when you forget, it's like it doesn't bother you anymore to the point where like you don't even remember it happened. It's like when they came like, hey, did you remember what such and such did? She was like, oh, that happened. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot about it. It's not like you should erase it from your memory, like do not remember it. But to a point in time where like you know, like when certain things happen, like 5 years later, you're laughing about it. It doesn't even bother you anymore. You're joking about it, like it's telling everyone. It reaches to that point where you just let it go to the point like you're just sharing it, like it's nothing now. You know, you forgot over your ex and now you could say his name without your heart feeling, you know, hurt and broken for what he did. And you're not being molested against him, you know? So
That's it.
it's just, you just forgot, you just let it go. And now it's just like a wind that passed through.
You got it, Williams. You got it, right? That's the idea. The forgetting comes naturally when you don't harbor the resentment. You see what I mean? As long as you stay toxic, you're not gonna forget. But if you tell yourself, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna allow this to make me toxic. I'm gonna let it go. Eventually, you'll forget, because you don't need this information. You don't need to protect yourself against that person because you're not damaged. They cannot, you see, this is what we don't realize. I want to really emphasize this, because a lot of us are afraid of love because of this. Love, or anything the lover does to hurt you, can never damage you unless you allow it to, right? Let me say that again. The pain that is inflicted on you can never damage you unless you allow it to damage you. Pain doesn't damage. Pain comes and goes. Like when you scratch yourself. Man, I cut my finger the other day, like super deep. So what? After a few days, it's gone. Nothing happened, right? But if it got infected, it would be another story. We ought to try not to become infected, right? Nothing can hurt you, only if, in other words, nothing can damage you, only if you choose to let it damage you. That's what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is the refusal to become damaged, the refusal to allow the pain to become poison, right? And so first person that is liberated is you. And by the way, the other doesn't even need to come begging for your forgiveness for you to do that. You do this for you. So what? They're over there still doing the same thing to someone else, right? You're not, they don't have to come to you to beg for forgiveness for you to forgive them. Because the first person you're doing it for is yourself, right? This is the way that you allow the pain not to become damage, right? Second thing, though, you also help the other when you forgive. How does it help this ex or whatever that you have forgiven them? What does this make possible now? What do you think? How does it help the other? Even if they don't know you've forgiven them, how does it help them? So let me, yes, go ahead, Sarkeesian.
Well, that's kind of what I wanted to mention as well. Hopefully not in the sense, right, if they were really abusive, that you'd be open to being in a relationship again. Do you know what I mean? But I suppose like what you were trying to actually get at was more so you help the other, because if you don't let it poison you, right? Then for example, right, like let's say you have a boyfriend, girlfriend, right? They cheat on you, right? And you're like, okay, you can either let that poison you and then cheat on them, right? And then they do something worse to you and you do something worse to them and it goes back and forth, right? Or like they cheat, or you just stop it, right? They cheat on you, you just forgive them, leave it alone, right? You break up or not, right? That's its own thing, right? But you don't do anything worse to them, and it just immediately like ends that cycle of like revenge.
Excellent. I like the language you're using, right? There's a cycle that builds up, right? And we can interrupt it, right? And in a way, you're opening up a possibility for the other to come back, right? If you forgive. So in a way, you're creating new possibilities for the other and also for the others of your life. So suppose you break up, right? This person nasty, you forgave them, you broke up. Because you have not allowed the pain to damage you, you can now be in another relationship without all this baggage, right? So in many ways, you're helping the other, whether it's your ex or somebody new, you're helping them by forgiving, because now you're open to love. Either with the same person, right? You're open to trying again. I mean, it takes a little time, okay? It's not immediate. I'm not saying they cheat on you and the next night you sleep with them. No, right? It takes a little time. It's a process. It's not easy. I mean, I'm going to tell you how hard it is. There was one person that did me wrong. It took me exactly a year to forgive them. Like, and every day I was working on this. So I would, I would get the thought. So I had this exercise I would do. So I recommend it, right? The thought would come. Yeah, this nasty person. I was like full of hatred towards this person. And I would be like, no. I would say it out loud. I mean, people would look at me, in the street. I'll be like, I don't want to think like this. I want to think, right? I want to be in a state of love. I don't want to be in a state of anger and resentment. And I would say it out loud. I don't want to be angry. I want to be loving. I don't want to be angry. And I would do this every time the anger came or rose in my heart. I would say it. I don't want to be angry. And it took me literally a year of doing this every day. Every time it came up, for finally the healing to take place, right? So it's a difficult process. It's a long process, but it's the only way where you can avoid the damage, right? Or cleanse yourself from the toxicity that is arising, right? And it's the only way that you can open up your possibilities for trying again or with someone else or with the same person. So you're opening up the field for love to happen again, right? Whether it's with them or with someone else. And finally, who are you helping? The whole cosmos, right? Like Sarkeesian was saying, when you end the cycle of violence, you're cleansing the universe, because instead of adding, right, and then they add and you add and they add and you add and polluting the whole world, you are stopping it. And so in a way you're contributing to, I was going to say, it's a kind of ecological, right, environmental um, impact of your forgiveness, right? You're helping the world become less toxic, right, as a whole. So very powerful technique. And honestly, it's not easy, but it's very simple. Like I told you, right? Anytime you feel the anger and the resentment, the toxic emotions rise up, you consciously respond and you say anything, right? I choose light instead of darkness, or I choose love instead of hate. And you say something that shows that you don't want this. You can't control it, right? You cannot control the feelings that arise and the anger and the resentment, but you can still wish or long to be freed from them. And so just saying that over and over again, eventually something shifts also within your heart, right? So that's okay. So now let's go to Rumi briefly and look at what he says and see how it connects. Go to page 77, second paragraph. This I pounded my head on this text for such a long time until I realized it has to do with forgiveness. Be clear like a mirror, reflecting nothing. That's what forgiveness will make you. Clear like a mirror, clear like a transparent lake, right? Here you are, clear, cleansed, purified, undamaged, no toxicity. Yes, the pain is there, but the pain is pure. You have to learn to suffer in a way. I mean, suffering is a whole art. We can we can go into that. You have to learn to suffer in the way that your pain remains pure and doesn't become toxic. You can still feel the pain very powerfully, but the pain is pure, and so you're not down. You're not down. You can still function. You're not, the pain is there, but because it's so pure, it doesn't really dissolve you, right? To use that term again. So be clear like a mirror, reflecting nothing. You don't reflect back onto the other, right? And then he continues, right? Contain all human faces in your, well, I crossed that out. What does it say? Sorry, I can't see in my text. In your own, yes. Contain all human faces in your own without any judgment. Be pure emptiness. What is inside that, you ask? Silence is all I can say, right? So this is a kind of how do you say this? Hygiene of the soul. You know how we try to be hygienic with our bodies? We wash, we put deodorant, we shave, whatever. We try to be. There's a whole hygiene for the soul that we need to learn and practice as meticulously as we practice the hygiene of the body. I mean, in this country, we're very hygienic, we're very clean, right? Can't see one single hair popping out or, anything, right? No smell, nothing, right? We're very clean. If we were to put the same effort in cleansing our souls, right? Cleansing our hearts, there is a hygiene of the heart, of the soul, that we need to also do in order to become, in order to love, in order to experience life, in order to experience love, right? And forgiveness is the most concrete tool, right? For you to do this cleansing regularly. Okay. Anything else before we close? Anybody want to add anything? Sarkeesian, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just in case we didn't go over it, I wanted to ask about it. The ending seems really non sequitur though. Like obviously the second page obviously builds up this whole thing, right? Like furthering the idea of like not focusing on just yourself, become many people, sort of also referring to more ego death, right? And also like kind of a thing, right? Like letting go of your worries, right? Like it seems like for a second it seems like silence is a bad thing, but really what they're trying to say is finally you get silence and peace instead of all these worries all the time, right?
Yep.
What's with the last two lines? Just randomly lovers have some secrets that they keep. It
All
seems a
right,
little
talk about that.
non sequitur.
Sure, let's go over that. It's a very strange ending. Rumi's all over the place, right? Lovers have some secrets that they keep. Did anybody come up with an explanation of that? What does it mean that we have some secrets? Go ahead.
I actually connected it with the Song of Songs when we talked about how we cannot just say everything that we know about ourselves to the first person we met, because otherwise this induction is gonna like just disappear.
Good.
You gotta have your own secrets.
Yes,
You
yes,
wanna
yes.
keep the love.
You guys can look at the poem, page 48, Secret Places. And you can also read that at home, right? And you will see another, I think, within Rumi, an interpretation of that. But yes, absolutely, you can say that the secret is the act of discretion, modesty. You don't reveal everything. You don't, you don't, what's the word? You're not flashy, right? You have a secret garden, which is what keeps you yourself and thereby attractive, right? Absolutely. Anybody else want to interpret that?
It's just a little bit weird for me because it's like I completely understand what Farah is saying, of course, but it's like it's like let go of the ego, right? Let go of your worries, all that stuff, right? And then suddenly it's like a random like two pieces of lines, kind of embracing your own individuality, right? And also something about not completely letting go. It's like a little
Go to
bit
page
weird.
48. Go to page 48. You'll see your answer. You can read it for us. Read the
Sure.
whole poem.
You want me to read the whole poem?
Yep, read the whole poem.
Okay. Lovers find secret places inside this violent world where they make transactions with beauty. Reason says, nonsense. I have walked and measured the walls here. There are no places like that. Love says, there are. Reason sets up a market and begins doing business. Love has more hidden work. Halaj steps away from the pulpit and climbs the stairs of the gallows. Lovers feel a truth inside themselves that rational people keep denying. It is reasonable to say, surrender is just an idea that keeps people from leaving their lives. Love responds, no, this thinking is what is dangerous. Using language obscures what shams came to give. Every day the sun rises out of low word clouds into burning silence.
Are you seeing what he means by lovers have secrets?
To be honest, actually, I have a hard time focusing on text when I'm reading out loud.
I know, I get it. Yeah, when you're when you're reading, you can't interpret. Can anyone help Sarkeesian? What did you see in this poem that was just read that would explain that lovers have secret places? What are these secret places? And how do they connect to what we've been studying? I'm focusing especially, reason sets up a market and begins doing business, right? This is the transaction we talked about before, but love has more hidden work, right? There is a hidden work of love which goes deeper than just transaction and that we miss out on, right? But it's secret. People don't understand it. You don't even see it sometimes. Do you see what I mean, Sarkeesian? This hidden work, when you're going beyond the transaction, when you're forgiving, you don't know where it's going, you're hanging on, and you don't know if it's going to work out, right? It's hidden from you, this work, right? You don't even know where you are, and no one knows where you are, and yet this hidden work is taking you someplace, but you don't have, when you're in it, you don't see it. It's secret.
Oh, the secrets are being linked to the silence.
Yeah, absolutely. But he's going even deeper here. He's talking about the silent work of love, right? When you're surrendered in the relationship, right? And it's not going well, but here you are surrendering, dissolving, whatever, and you don't know where it's going. And you feel like you're wasting time and you might, you know, damage yourself, and you don't even see this hidden work of love, right? That is taking place on you, on the other, and that is leading you somewhere ultimately, right? So very often the work of love is hidden. You're loving, but you don't know. Very often we're confused, we're lost. We don't see. It's secretive, right? The work of love is secretive. Or you have this lovers feel a truth inside themselves that rational people keep denying, right? Others cannot understand your love sometimes. Others don't understand why you choose to stay with this person, right? You don't understand why you choose to stay with this person, right? It's a secret work of love taking place within yourself. Makes sense, Sarkeesian?
Yeah, I think it was in a couple of other works we looked at as well, like the idea of like embracing the uncertainty.
Yeah, and we saw even with the Song of Songs, right? I mean, they don't see the outcome, and they're hanging in there, right? They're changing, and ultimately they get to this love which is stronger than death that none of us expected, to be honest, right? I mean, if I'm a biblical reader and I read this text of the Song of Songs, they're headed towards disaster as far as I'm concerned when I read the first few verses, right? And yet we see the hidden work of love somehow brought them to their destination. And very often in a relationship, it's like this, right? You don't know where you're going. Everybody is telling you don't go there. And ultimately, somehow it ends up working out. That's the secret work of love, right? That's one of the ways to interpret. So yeah, ponder this text on page, I think 48, right? What did I say? Where am I? Yeah, and you will. There are a lot of connections between that text and our text. It's a good question.
Yeah, I
Okay.
noticed in Song of Songs there was a lot of like events that seem to happen in between the text themselves, right? They don't actually describe every event, but there's lots of stuff you can like read into it and see it
Yeah,
happened.
a lot of subtext in Song of Songs. Yes, here too. All poetry, right? Okay, guys, I'm gonna call it a day. I'm gonna stop the